Welcome to everyone. My name is Nancy Lynn. I'm a senior vice president at BrightFocus Foundation. BrightFocus funds research globally to understand and treat Alzheimer's disease, macular degeneration, and glaucoma. We are delighted to bring you a third episode of Zoom In on dementia and Alzheimer's, which is supported with some educational grants from Eli Lilly and Company and Genentech. We received a lot of personal questions. I think you'll find that they will be answered, but more in the abstract. So I might suggest one or two questions that are typical of, my mother got it, will my children get it, those types of questions. So if you have a question to ask that is personal, if you can make it into something more generic, like if a person has XYZ and not so specific to you, that would be better. So I'm going to start. Let's jump right in so I can introduce Professor John Hardy. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me give a little bio. Professor John Hardy is the chair of molecular biology of neurological disease at the University College London Institute of Neurology. He is a world-leading neurogeneticist in the field of neurodegenerative diseases, receiving numerous accolades that include the Breakthrough Prize in Life Sciences, the Brain Prize, and in 2009, being elected a Fellow of the Royal Society. I wasn't sure whether to call him Professor, Doctor, or Sir, because they're all applicable, but we're going to call him Professor today. In 1991, Dr. Hardy's team uncovered the first mutation directly implicated in Alzheimer's disease, leading to the formulation of the highly influential amyloid cascade hypothesis. Welcome, Dr. Hardy.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a real honor to be in this series, and BrightFocus have helped us in the past. It's a real honor to help, if any way, help back. It's really a nice thing to be on this call.
Well, thank you so much. It's so hard for people to get direct and accurate and information in plain English. So that's what we're going to ask you to do today. And I realized that in titling this episode is Alzheimer's, Hereditary, Genetics, and Dementia. I started out with one of the most commonly confusing things. Alzheimer's and dementia are different things. And so today, a lot of the questions are about Alzheimer's, but a lot of them are also dementia. And obviously, we're going to ask you to explain genetically what the difference is. But can you give a little overview? What's the difference and how we're going to be talking about that today?
Well, Alzheimer's disease is a disease. And so, in other words, it relates to a specific pathology in the brain, which causes specific symptoms, typically starting with problems with short-term memory. Dementia is a general term which covers Alzheimer's disease, but it also covers other rarer diseases. Those other rarer diseases are frontal temporal dementia, prion diseases, vascular dementia. So Alzheimer's disease is a single disease, but dementia is a general term for people who are losing their cognitive abilities.
And I'm going to just ask the obvious question then. We're going to talk about generally Alzheimer's disease and hereditary and genes associated. Are there different statistics and genes for the different types, if it's vascular dementia or Parkinson's related dementia? Obviously, we can ask specific. I see already questions coming in about vascular, Lewy body. Can you generalize, or is it different for every type of dementia?
There's different genes involved in the different forms of dementia. Yes, different forms. So yes, you mentioned Lewy body dementia, that some of those genes are common to Parkinson's disease, and some of them are, but a lot of them are different from the genes involved in Alzheimer's disease. So yes, different genes are involved.
Okay, that's important to know. So I'm going to start. I'm looking in the chat box here, because usually I'll ask a bunch of questions, but since you all are asking them, which I'm thrilled, Let me start with one that's most typical, and then we can get to some of the more specific ones. I'm going to ask Michelle's question. If a person has 3 generations of Alzheimer's on the mother's side, 2 generations of Alzheimer's on the father's side, what testing can be done to know the person's fate? So you might want to preface this. I'm jumping right to someone's question so that we can use an example, but let's ask you the question. Is Alzheimer's disease hereditary?
So there are, well, in response to that question, the first thing I would do was I would ask at what age did the other generations get it? There are rare forms of Alzheimer's disease where the disease is a simple genetic disease. So those in general have onset ages in the, well, actually 40s and 50s. And if you're in one of those families, you nearly always know it, of course, because it's a very dramatic disease. And if your parent in one of those families has it, then you have a 50% chance of getting it at about the same age. Those families are rare. And if you're in one of those families, well, by all means, email me, but I think that there are specific programs at the Alzheimer's Disease Research Centers for people in those families. Now, more generally, though, what you find is people, and I think this is the questioner just texted to say that in her family, the age was between 70 and 80. And if that is the case, then your chances of getting the disease, let's say your mother or father had the disease at about 70 or 80, and you're at let's say you're now 50, your chances of getting the disease by about 70 to 80 is a little bit higher than mine. I don't have it in my family, but it's not the major reason that for problems in your family. It increases your risk, but not to an enormous extent. I should also say one more thing, and that is that treatments are just starting. And so let's say you're 50 and your mum got it when she was 70. You know, what you're betting on also is that in the next 20 years, we'll get better at treating the disease. So you're also, without people generally realizing this, betting on research progress as well. So you've both got the risk as it stands now, and also the risk and the benefits of the research over the next 20 years. So if you're 50, let's say, and you're worried about getting it by the age of 70, live your life, enjoy your life. I mean, and keep your eye on research for sure, and support research and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, don't let it dominate. Don't let it dominate your life. The other thing is that we know now from epidemiological studies that increasing your heart health helps. So all of those things which those boring dietitians tell us to do, eat tomatoes, you know, salads, low-fat diets, keep your cholesterol low, keep, you know, manage your blood pressure. All of those things also reduce the risk of disease, it seems. So if you want to do something practical, that is a practical thing to do. I have to say I don't follow all of those things myself, but that is what you should do.
Thank you. And Michelle wrote in 70 to 78. So just to restate and clarify, so there's what we call early onset Alzheimer's, which can come on generally or develop in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and then what we call late onset Alzheimer's, which usually symptoms appear in your 70s. And those two are genetically different. And so we had a lot of questions about early onset. Can you talk about the genetic situation for those that have early onset?
So people with early onset, and this actually goes for the other dementias too, if you have early onset disease, in your family, and let's say your mother or father got it at the age of 40 or 50, and let's say their parent got it at the same age, then in those situations, well, firstly, I'd be very happy to hear from you. But what you should really be doing, I think, is looking for a specialist center. If you're in one of those families, there really are specialist centers now, trying to identify such families and help them with experimental and now approved treatments.
I want to mention that we are going to, Dr. Hardy has very generously offered to provide his email for those who have follow-on questions. So at the end of this episode, we will be providing Dr. Hardy's email to you, and we will also be providing you with a general email to follow up if we haven't answered your specific question, or if your question doesn't relate specifically to genetics. And also, Dr. Hardy referred to Alzheimer's disease research centers or specialist centers. And we talked about this before the episode today. It's very easy for the field to say to all of you, ask your doctor or go see your neurologist. Well, a lot of doctors, the truth is a lot of doctors are not that well educated about dementias, Alzheimer's, vascular Lewy body, misdiagnoses are very common. Sending people home and just saying, you're okay, come back in a year is very common because, as you know, these diseases are very complex and would take the doctor so much time. So in an effort to try to begin helping this situation for you guys, at the end, we're going to show you where to find out where there are nationally organized Alzheimer's disease research centers, which run clinical trials. And I see there are already some questions about clinical trials in the chat, which is great. Where there are Alzheimer's disease research centers and where you can call to try to find a qualified neurologist or a doctor near you, because we realize that is difficult for a huge swath of populations in the United States. If someone has a recent vascular dementia diagnosis, can that be connected to Alzheimer's?
Probably not. I mean, there is some overlap, probably not. And I mean, of course, a person with a vascular problem should be controlling their blood pressure and cholesterol and so on and so forth. And this is something that I think that local neurologists are really, on top of. If they've made a diagnosis of vascular dementia, they will, I hope anyway, be telling you to control your blood pressure and so on and so forth.
Here's a question from Mindy in the chat. My neurologist discourages me from getting genetic testing. I have Alzheimer's on both sides and donated my mother's brain, which was another, we got some questions about that. She said, she would do it. What's your take on this? Would you want to know, this is a great question, would you want to know if you had ApoE4 or ApoE4 positive?
My view on this is changing. So if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have said, no, I don't want to know. But my view is changing. And the reason my view is changing is because treatments are coming now. And, if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have said no, because there isn't much I could do about it apart from the heart health type things, which I've mentioned. But now I might want to know earlier, because I might want to get involved with a center which is starting to do the treatment with the drugs which are coming on. Well, they're now on the market, but not yet widely available. So this is a question where the answer will change over the next few years.
I think that also I've been doing this about 15 years. People feel that there's a right answer or a wrong answer there. Should you get tested? Should you not? And I don't really think, I got tested 10 years ago when I first started to get into the field to see, ApoE condition. I'm a want to know type of person. There's a lot of people who are not want to know type of person.
Oh.
So I don't think that there's a definite answer to that. There's a gentleman, you may know him as well, who worked with Eli Lilly as a scientist for many, many years. And he found out he was ApoE4 positive, had 4 alleles. And I remember calling him one day and asking him how he was doing. And he said, you know, being ApoE4 positive is not a death sentence. It's not and so I think that's what you were just saying. You want to live your life. You want to live, even if you're diagnosed with a dementia, you want to live your life as best you can. And I think that's a message you want to express love, be loved, be loving, and live the way you can. So for those who are wanna-knows, and they want, and there's a lot of them, I suspect, on this call because they're all asking questions. I have it in my family in some way. I want to know if I'm going to get it, and I want to know if my children are going to get it. So if someone wants to get tested, what types of diagnostic tests are available, and how do you get them? But then I'll go into how do you know if they're accurate and what do they mean?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, and there's no simple answer. So, I mean, of course, essentially you can get testing with companies like 23andMe. Essentially, you can. And I don't know what the quality of the information they give is. If you have an E4 allele, the risk allele, then your chance goes up by a factor of between 2 and 3 of having dementia. So if it's 5% at age 70 for me, for example, then it's 10% if you have an E4. Those are the types of numbers that you can get. And if you have 2 copies of E4, your chances are maybe 20% by the age of 70. Having said all of this, I was at a meeting yesterday, and to my amazement, there's a study in Holland where they're looking at centenarians, and their oldest surviving person is somebody with an E4 homozygote, and they're 103 years old, and they are still cognitively okay. So just like you said, and just like the Eli Lilly guy said, you know, genetics isn't destiny. It is not destiny. So, and also I absolutely agree. This is a personal decision. There's no right and no wrong answer about whether you want to get tested or not.
And I want to, because a lot of people asked if they're worried about it, and I wrote a little list for myself to try to compile the questions. There are brain scans now that will tell you if you have a certain sticky protein called amyloid in your brain, which is thought to be indicative of Alzheimer's. But as Dr. Hardy is saying, there are many people who grow old and are cognitively healthy who have lots of amyloid. There are also people who have dementias that don't have any so we're really not clear yet. Let's state that. But we can have a scan to find out if there's amyloid or another protein called tau in the brain. We can now soon have a blood test that sees certain proteins in the blood, which is the cheapest, fastest way to find out where your amyloid protein stands. We can have a genetic screening at a place like 23andMe or someplace more sophisticated. We can do cognitive tests. We can do lumbar punctures. So if you're, I think I'm asking a repetitive question, but it's because there's so many questions about this. If you say to your neurologist, you know, I want to know, can I get a scan? Can I get a blood test? How do people navigate this?
Well, you're pointing out an area where there is confusion with the researchers. So, you know, your confusion and your listeners' confusion really reflects where we're up to. All of those things. So the genetic testing, the blood test at present, the scans, all of them give information which make the diagnosis more likely, all of them, but none of them reach certainty by any means. A lot of them are not quite ready for even being used in a medical situation. We're very interested and excited by the blood tests, but they have not yet been approved. And the reason they have not been approved is because all the quality control work has not yet been done. So we think we're moving towards greater certainty, but we're not there yet.
Which is frustrating.
It's frustrating. Yes, it is
Very
frustrating.
well, frustrating.
More research. That's all I have to say. That's all I have to say, Nancy. More research. That's what we need.
I will support that as well. And along those lines, there have been a couple of questions about participation in clinical trials. And I would say that this idea of getting scans, which are very expensive, right? $7,000-8,000 in the US, and they are not reimbursed. If you are a want-to-know person and or a person who wants to contribute, like Anya, who wrote in the chat, I plan to be contributing to the society into my 90s. You go. I need to know. You can participate in a clinical trial. So we'll do another episode specifically about clinical trials. But when you volunteer to participate in research, if you qualify, if you're able, and that's another very complex area, you will get all of those tests generally as part of your trial. So you would, for example, to participate in a test, let's say for Leqembi, the new antibody that is likely to get approval, you would get a brain scan, a lumbar puncture, cognitive. You get a lot of testing done, and you will get state-of-the-art treatment or attention. So that is one way for the wanna-knows people to participate and learn more, and also a way to give back. And I think the same is true for brain donations, although that also is you need to live near a place, there are all kinds of conditions. So if anyone is interested in brain donation, please do email us. And I'm going to go to, I think Mindy was raising her actual hand rather than her virtual hand.
Sorry,
Mindy?
I was raising my hand because I can't find the raise hand on the reactions.
No worries.
I just wanted to throw out there, when I donated my mother's brain, it was quite a it was an amazing thing, and I'm so glad that I did it, and it made me feel so much better about what she went through. But I live in Virginia, and I had a very hard time finding a place to donate her brain, and I would be making these calls, offering, and people are like, oh, if she's not in a clinical trial already, we can't take it. And so I just wanted to throw this out there in case anybody's ever interested. I ended up donating to the University of Miami, and they helped pay for harvesting it and transporting. I paid a little bit, but it was worth it, because then I got to find out her results were included in what I helped pay, which wasn't much.
No, that's a wonderful thing. And you're right. I work in an institution where we have a brain bank. It is quite difficult. There's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
And then as you obviously realize, from Virginia to Miami. So, it's a lot of transport issues as well. It is a difficult thing to do. And if you're going to do it, I would recommend you start contacting people very early. The other thing that I've said to people here is, if you can't, if somewhere can't take your brain, what you might think about doing is suggesting people give money to a research charity like BrightFocus in lieu of flowers. We do that a lot here. I've just done that with my mother-in-law who died recently. People gave to the charity she chose in lieu of flowers to remember. So that's something to think about if you can't do the brain donation. but well done for persevering too.
Yeah, and thanks, Dr. Hardy, for that plug of funding research. And Dr. Sharon Rossi, who's on our scientific affairs team at BrightFocus, put in the chat that she wanted to know, we do fund that 100+ person cohort in the Netherlands that you were referring to earlier.
Okay, yes,
Yeah.
you do. That's right. I saw that grant go through. Yes.
Yeah.
It is a wonderful study. It's a wonderful study.
So what, from Anya in the chat again, what percentage brain shrinkage do you think for sure indicates dementia? It's all my mom shows: vascular clogged arteries, cells die. But brain shrinkage is something that we also see with Alzheimer's. Is there a percentage that indicates, that?
No, there isn't. But often outside, let's say the average male brain is about 1 kilogram, and often you get a male Alzheimer brain which is about 800 grams. So that's a big loss. Having said that, though, one of the things that's really your brain shrinks and grows, shrinks and expands all the time, based on your water content. If you start to take things which make you urinate more, and you'll lose brain volume because it sucks the water out of your brain. So there is natural variation in all of us in our brain size during the day as well. So it's a bit, I can't give an exact figure, but people with severe Alzheimer's disease have typically lost 15 to 20%.
There was, I'm looking for it now, a Vimeo question from Steve. If a person tests positive to have the genetics that can lead to Alzheimer's, does that impact eligibility for health insurance?
I don't know. I don't know that. And that is, of course, a question I've seen debated. And of course, I'm here in England, and the regulations, I'm sure, are different here in England than they are in the US. Yeah, it's a very important question. I'm really sorry, I don't know the answer.
Oh no, I'm sorry to send one at you while you're there in England, but as most of you probably know, the issues with health insurance coverage or Medicare or Medicaid coverage for Alzheimer's related testing and medications is in a very contentious and difficult state right now, and not settled in the US. So it's a good question. And for those that are interested, keep monitoring what happens with Medicare and Medicaid and the Leqembi approvals. And I'll note that the Veterans Association in the United States voted to cover use of Leqembi. So there's different dances being danced right now about coverage and insurance, and we're going to have to watch and see how that plays out. Darlene?
Yeah, I'm in California, and just for informational purposes, we have in our caregiver support group a 53-year-old early onset Alzheimer patient, and in California under Medi-Cal, it's an automatic with the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disability coverage and medical insurance. So progress here.
That's great. That's great.
That's great. It's sure right.
I would think that'd be a huge deterrent to get people tested, because who wants them to say, oh, sorry, we're not going to cover you anymore? Who wants to take that chance?
Yeah, and Darlene, I don't think that wasn't the specific, is that what you were addressing in your answer?
Yes, specifically that he had the diagnosis from a neurologist that he has Alzheimer's, then he could immediately get on disability insurance and medical insurance. The other
Yeah.
thing I would like to mention is, well, my mother, I donated her brain to University of Washington back in 2000. But science care also takes bodies and helps with cost.
University of Washington is a great center, by the way, great center.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Looking through the questions in the chat, and somebody, Michelle asks, do you recommend neurotropics? And I know this is not your area, but there were a lot of questions about supplements, drugs, lifestyle intervention, and so on. Is there any things that you want to highlight that you do think are helpful?
Well, only what I said before, heart health. Heart health. There's a very good study called the Finger Study, FINNGER, double M because it's from Finland originally, showing that that really all of those, I'm going to say, boring things, exercise, good diet, and blood pressure control really do make a difference. Supplements, I'm not a fan of myself, but heart health, definitely.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm going to go to you next, Jill, that we're going to do an episode dedicated to those lifestyle interventions. I think exercise, and a certain type of exercise is the one thing that's been shown to most help the risk reduction, let's say. There's a debate now about should we use the word prevention or risk reduction, and I personally err on the side of risk reduction. We don't prevent cancer, but by not smoking, we reduce our risk of it. So there are those that will argue that you can prevent Alzheimer's. I don't think we're there yet, but we can definitely reduce our risk with lifestyle, and that will involve exercise, eating generally a good, healthy and Mediterranean diet if you're not in a food desert and you can get those healthy foods, getting good sleep, reducing stress, being socially interactive as much as possible. Let's see, what else is on the list? Not smoking, of course, not excessive use of alcohol. And I think one of the things we're thinking about at BrightFocus, because we also fund research for eye diseases, is hearing loss is an accepted or recognized risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. We believe vision loss is as well. Anything that isolates one as you get older, isolates you from social interaction and a healthy lifestyle, is a risk factor for Alzheimer's. Jill, let's go to Jill Rice.
Hi, I just had started to zoom in on this, and I'm really curious. Is it expensive to find out if you have the 4 gene, the ALPO4 gene? And I don't know if I should do that. My grandmother had Alzheimer's. My mother had Alzheimer's. My oldest sister died of it, and my next oldest sister has just got it. And I'm scared to death.
Well, you sound pretty well. You sound pretty well yourself right now. So I wouldn't worry too much. I wouldn't worry too much. You can get tested if you want through 23andMe, but that's up to you. You know, I would just do what we've been saying, which is risk reduction through an active life, and judging by where you're calling in from, you're doing that already.
Yes, I work out, and I'm still working, actively working, and I'm going to be 75. So I'm trying to do everything, but I'm scared.
We got a lot of comments submitted by all of you that said, I'm scared. And I think for me, knowledge is power. And even though there's so much we don't know, you know, participating in these types of forums, I think, is one way to help with the fear, so that you feel you have somebody you can ask these questions of. I want to also point out that we have another series called Brain Info Live. And if you go to our website and just do brightfocus.org/brain info live, we have over 70 episodes, all on specific Alzheimer's or brain health related topics. So you'll find a whole episode, for example, on clinical trials or APOE4 or, and they're in Spanish and English, and the first one we've just done in Haitian Creole. So, and I know Alexa put in here, I'm not going to be able to find it, that we did a whole episode. I don't know if you can unmute Alexa.
On brain donation.
On brain donation.
Yeah.
So if you are interested in brain donation, we did do a dedicated episode. So please do check out that free resource. We're trying to provide free resources, understandable resources, and resources you can share with whomever you wish. Oh, let's see. Let's go to Atali. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly.
Hello, can we ask scientific questions to Professor Hardy?
I think so, and I'll ask Dr. Hardy to make it understandable, his answer understandable as much as possible to the rest of the community.
I'll do my best.
Okay, so it's an honor to listen to Professor Hardy, and he's such a giant for us all of researchers. And I just want to say, I worked with Professor Nihan Altuna in 2014, who was instrumental in 2013 getting rid of a TREM2 paper in providing the Turkish cohort. I wanted to ask him something related to our understanding of AD in basic sciences. For the longest time, AD field has had a disease model problem because our models were flawed, and it led to failures in trials for the last 20 years until the very recently antibodies that are out there. In Professor's opinion, does he think we're ever going to reach a unified understanding of AD for better models instead of the current status where different theories such as amyloid, tau, synaptic dysfunction, mitochondrial dysfunction, and neuroinflammation are all true on their ends?
Yeah, well, I think we're moving to, I might just be optimistic here. I think we are moving every year closer to a more, a greater view. So just to give a couple of examples, people used to argue about whether amyloid was important. Well, showing that if you remove amyloid, but slows down the progress, that tells you that amyloid is important. So that argument is over. There are trials now of anti-tau drugs, and those looked hopeful too. So I think that people are getting less. The researchers used to, as you kind of indicated in your question, just used to focus on one thing each. And I think that we're really moving to researchers having a more general view of the disease and taking multiple factors and recognizing that multiple factors are important. So there is real progress, and I think there's much more of a consensus now than there was before these trials started to show positive benefit. So yes, I think we will get better, and the models are getting better too. You're a scientist, and so you know that the animal models have not been perfect by any means, but now we're beginning to learn how to use the models more effectively to translate into the human situation.
Yes, thank you very much.
And thanks for those compliments as well, by the way. Of course, I appreciate them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Hardy, let's go to Arnold.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. In my particular situation, my father was 90 years old, 89 or 90, when he was diagnosed with dementia in 2003. And so I'm getting to that same age. I'm now 86. You haven't talked about people like me who are in their late 80s or early 90s. And what that tells me, should I start worrying about it? I don't think I have it now, except for the old age problem of forgetting words and names and that kind of thing.
Well, I would say the same. Well, firstly, my mum's 93 and she's still a pain in the ass. So, and she's still as feisty. You seem pretty feisty too. I won't call you a pain in the ass, but you're pretty feisty too. I would just enjoy your life. Enjoy your life. you know, and yeah, control heart health, don't smoke, but, you know, do those things. But no, I don't think you need to worry.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Hardy, someone wrote in, does medically controlled heart health, like high blood pressure controlled by a medication that I can't pronounce, does that count? Or do you have to
Yes. Oh,
exercise?
sure. I'm on a blood pressure drug, and I'm on a statin, and you know, those things are all good for this. They're all good. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question, Dr. Hardy, because it came in several times, and I know what you're going to say, but coconut oil.
No proof. Just no proof.
Red wine.
Pardon?
Red wine.
No, actually, I don't. I mean, believe me, I'm going to have a glass of red wine when I get home, but I'm going to have a glass of red wine when I get home because I like it. I don't think it does anything to do. I actually don't think it does anything for Alzheimer's disease. So I'm not going to use that excuse. I'm just going to have a glass because I like it.
And I think there's a deeper message in that too, which we've started to refer to, is live the best quality life. This is a dear friend of mine quotes, I think it was Swanson, who was asked why she was doing all kinds of things when she was older to stay healthy. And she said, darling, I want to die alive. And I think that's a wonderful lesson in a sense. We also did a Brain Info Live episode, and thanks Martha and others for the kind comments about Brain Info Live. There's a lot of information in those episodes. We did one with a caregiver from Boston who had taken care of her mother through the whole course of Alzheimer's, was her only caregiver. And then after her mother passed away, her father was diagnosed. And this is unfortunately not unusual. And the host asked her, what did you do differently with your father than you did with your mother? And I just loved her answer so much, because she said, well, with my mother, I worried, we argued, you know, and somebody actually wrote in a question where they said their spouse had been diagnosed and that their spouse is doing a lot of things intentionally to annoy them. And I hear this all the time. When your spouse or your loved one or your child or your parent is asking you the same question over and over, or getting irritated, this is not on purpose.
Right.
This is a disease. It's part of a disease. And so the person asks, you know, what do I do? And I think the thing to do, first of all, is to first understand they're not doing it to annoy you. And try to have compassion and try to answer the question, or deflect or ignore the question, be calm, you know, deflect or redirect, I think is, and I'm sure there's people on this call. I know there's a lot of professionals who have, I'm sure, a lot more to say on that. We can do another episode on that, but living your best life, loving. Oh, so sorry, back to the story. So she said what she did differently with her father was that she would just sit out on the porch with him. And she said she would just be with him while he was still able to be present. And that was how she changed her behavior as a caregiver. And I just found that really fascinating. She just tried to enjoy being in his presence and giving him love and feeling love from him.
It's no good having an argument with somebody with Alzheimer's disease. It's just no good, because I mean, they won't remember, and you know that it's just upsetting for you and for them. And like you say, they're not doing it deliberately, and you correct them and they won't remember necessarily the fact that they've been corrected. It's just yeah, what you said, absolutely right.
We have 10 minutes left. I'm going to leave 5 minutes to go through the resources for you. So if you haven't asked a question and really want to, but are being shy, please, I can't see everybody, so I can't necessarily see you if you're doing that. So
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
This is Michael. I'm sorry.
hey.
I'm sorry I can't put my camera on, but for some reason, if I have that camera on, the volume doesn't work. So if I could ask my question now, and I know it's a little bit late, but
Far away.
thank you again for all this. And what I want to touch on, you were talking about clinical trials. And I think we're really missing a great opportunity today with clinical trials. We think of clinical trials in the sense of drug testing and other things similar to that. But with the technology that we have today, that people can wear wearables and monitors in the house, why are we not starting to think of following people who are living with dementia within their home and start seeing how they're progressing that might help out in clinical trials?
Oh, you're totally right. You're totally right. And actually, there is I don't know the American situation too well, but here in the UK, we have a centre at Imperial College in London, which is doing exactly what you suggest. And I've seen grant applications from America. I don't know what's going on exactly to do monitoring of people with Alzheimer's disease in the house, in their homes, and all this sort of thing. So what you say is, I'm going to say, beginning to happen. It's a very good way of using technology. I absolutely think it's one of the ways we can improve things in the future. Nice car, by the way, in your picture.
Thank you, Michael. And I'll mention Michael is someone, he's said it's okay to say this, he is someone living with Alzheimer's and really participates with the community in research and advocacy in every way possible. So thank you, Michael. And let's go to Laura.
Thank you, Michael, too, because that's sort of in the line of what I'm saying. And I was in a clinical study, I guess I would call it, and was told that I had APOE4 as one of my gene studies, and also was in a clinical trial for nicotine, and would like to do more. I don't really want to take any medication or that kind, but as Michael is suggesting, just keeping track of what's going on, and if there are any brain scans or anything else that could be done, I would like that too.
It sounds like we should do an episode really about specific trials that people can participate in, because the point is being made here, and it's one we talk about a lot. Not every clinical, there's something called research studies rather than clinical trials. That can be a lifestyle intervention, that can be on sleep, it can be on exercise, it could be on diet, it could be, so many different factors of lifestyle intervention. So you're not taking a drug, or if you don't qualify for a trial where you're taking a drug, there are alternatives. And somebody has written, how do you know, Mindy wrote, how do you know if clinical trials are safe or on the up and up? I see ads and emails all the time. Or Deborah saying, I was in a drug trial study and was kicked out because I had no tau tangles. Some of the recruitment centers, if you don't qualify for one trial, or get kicked out along the way, as Deborah's saying, will actually take the time and care to say, okay, you didn't qualify for this study, but there's another one you can participate in. So I think, as I say, we wouldn't be able to address everybody's individual situations here, but we can, if you all are interested, do something that talks more about specific trials or types of trials and how to get informed about them. And I just want to ask if you know, Dr. Hardy, because I don't know off the top of my head, but we can find out, are there specific active recruiting trials for people with the APOE4 homozygotes?
There was, I don't know if the recruitment's finished, organized out of Boston. I'm blocking on I think it was called the E4 trial. I might be wrong, but there was one in the past. I'm sure that there will be others in the future, because we know about that E4 generally causes amyloid deposition, and there are now a lot of pushes to test things against amyloid deposition based upon the success. So I don't know the details, but I'm sure there are trials specifically aimed at that population.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure as well. So we will do an episode about this. And while we can't exactly endorse specific trials over other trials, I think we can provide information on those that are available and perhaps help you do some due diligence. Susan?
Yes, I'm participating in a longitudinal study here at NYU in New York. And part of that is, besides going in and doing all this memory testing thing that feels like your brain's pulled out, wrung dry, and stuffed back in, but they want me also to do a brain scan, an MRI. Now, I had understood that this may be a little off your topic, but I had understood that if you have artificial joints, as I do in my shoulders, that interferes with the brain scan. Do you have any information on that?
Well, I'll give you unreliable information. And
Oh, better than nothing.
But that is that, you know, the trouble, the MRI stands for magnetic. If you have metal in your shoulders, that is a problem with the magnets. So
Right.
if it is an MRI, yes, it is something that you might not be able to participate in, because it's a magnetic, you know, it picks up the magnet, and so that's the possible reason. Having told you it's unreliable, you should check that with them rather than listen to me on that.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you also to Dr. Sharon Rossi, again, from BrightFocus Scientific Affairs. She's put in the chat a link to the AHEAD study. So for those that are interested, you can do that link, or let's see, it's www.aheadstudy.org, aheadstudy.org. And I am assuming, since Sharon put that in there, that this looks at your ApoE4 condition. And we're out of time, but I'll ask just a last question, Dr. Hardy. The new drugs, Leqembi, donanemab, that are aducanumab, will they potentially act differently for people who are ApoE4 positive than for those that are not?
Well, the data is that they do. If you're E4 positive, it's well, you always need to be monitored in these trials. You always need to be monitored. I think that they basically work in all genotypes, but you need to be monitored, and that's going to be the key answer, really. But
that makes perfect sense. I could go on forever here, but I'm going to wrap up. First of all, thank you, Dr. Hardy. It's really an honor, and there are not so many, I think, scientists as accomplished as yourself who can also make things very understandable for the rest of us, and has a really cool accent. So thank you for participating with us today. And thank you to all of you, and especially for asking questions and really interacting today. It's very meaningful to us, and thank you for the questions that you sent in advance as well. Let's bring up the closing slides here. Thank you. Sorry, they're blurry, at least they're blurry on my screen, but it says if your question was not answered today, or if you have suggestions for future topics, you can email, thank you, reply@brightfocus.org. And as I promised, Dr. Hardy has offered to answer questions by email. And you see his email here, j.hardy@ucl.ac.uk. And if you're listening online and didn't catch that, or anyone who's registered today is going to receive an email with all of this information and all of the resources. And just let's go to the next slide, please. So BrightFocus, in addition to the study that we mentioned earlier, BrightFocus funds a lot of research on lots of different topics. So we decided that we would email to everybody links to BrightFocus funded research that specifically relates to genetics and dementia. There are several. So rather than try to put a whole bunch of links here in a resource page, we will email that information to you, or again, you can write to us at reply@brightfocus.org. The little map at the bottom of this slide, if you can see it, shows where the Alzheimer's disease research centers in the United States are, shows the states, doesn't show where within the state they are. But so if you're in one of those states, there is an Alzheimer's disease research center. And if you go to the link shown here, and again, if you're seeing this and want to take a quick snapshot with your phone of this slide, please feel free to do that. We will email this information to you, but nia.nih.gov Health Alzheimer's Disease Research Centers, you can find where the Alzheimer's Disease Research Centers are. And there's also a link here to the NIH Alzheimer's Disease Genetics Fact Sheet. That has a lot of information, basic information. And then, so if you are trying to find a neurologist, you are meant to first ask your primary care doctor, but if your primary care doctor doesn't have a good recommendation for you, I would say to try to call the nearest Alzheimer's Disease Research Center and ask for their referrals. There's the American Association of Neurology. There are a lot of associations and so on, but it really, we know it is very difficult to find these resources. And so again, if we can help in any way, please contact us. I think that's it. If we go to the next slide, our next episode is Thursday, July 27th. And we're going to go back to the topic our first episode was about Leqembi, specifically the new Alzheimer's drug. What is it? What does it do? But with so much happening in the approvals space, we thought we should go back and broaden that to a dementia drugs town hall. What's new, what's old, what's approved, what's covered. And I think after that, we mentioned in September, we'll try to do something on lifestyle interventions, and certainly thanks to your interaction today, we'll focus quite a bit also on clinical trials, what clinical trials are available and how to find them, how to know whether you qualify or not, all of those things. So again, thank you, Dr. Hardy, and thanks to all of you for participating, and we look forward to seeing you again on July 27th.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much.